Hello everyone, I am the Lexo623, and today we are going to talk about one of my favorite Pixar movies, The Incredibles. Now, you might ask, Lex, why are you reviewing this now of all times? Well, I just got the idea, because seeing as how the sequel comes out in 2 months, I just decided I'd review this and then later review the second movie. So, let's talk about The Incredibles. It was directed by Brad Bird and stars Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Samuel L. Jackson, and Jason Lee. So, what is this movie about? Well, let's just read the synopsis off. From the creative mind behind the Toy Story films and Ratatouille comes this hilarious, action-packed animated adventure about a seemingly ordinary family with an incredible secret. Known to the world as superheroes Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl, Bob Parr and his wife Helen are among the world's greatest crime fighters, saving lives and battling evil on a daily basis. 15 years later, they have been forced to adopt civilian identities and retreat to the suburbs to live normal lives with their 3 kids, Violet, Dash, and Jack Jack. Itching to get back into action, Bob gets his chance when a mysterious communication summons him to a remote island for a top-secret assignment. He soon discovers that it will take a super family effort to rescue the world from total destruction. And that's basically the synopsis of the film. So, let's talk about what I personally think about it. First, we'll do the shortest part, which is what I don't like about this film. The only thing I really don't like is that the film was made in 2004, so there are obviously some animation errors, like the fact that Violet's hairline changes positions multiple times. But other than that, I don't really have very many issues with the film. So, let's talk about the characters. First off, I'm going to start with the villain. The villain. Jason Lee's Syndrome. Now, Syndrome is probably Pixar's greatest villain of all time. Now, usually Pixar films don't really have villains per se, but they usually are having the heroes fight against an idea or an organization or themselves. It's usually not really towards an antagonist. Except for this film. This one has a villain. Syndrome, played by Jason Lee. So, why is Syndrome so good? Well, that is because of the fact that, well, he has a really good plan. I mean, he's planning on bringing superheroes back by sending a robot to the city to destroy some stuff, and then he destroys the robot that he built. And then, in a few years, he will give everyone the technology to become superheroes. So that when everyone is super, no one will be. And also, Syndrome he just has the greatest personality for a villain. I mean, he literally lives on an entire island called Nomanison Island, which basically he is actually trying to convey to Mr. Incredible. Well, in the beginning, he was Buddy Pine, and he was trying to fight crime with Mr. Incredible by being Incrediboy. But that did not work out because Mr. Incredible was like, oh, I work alone and all that stuff. But 15 years later, when the story resumes. He takes the identity of Syndrome and basically tries to convey to Syndrome that, not Syndrome, he tries to convey to Mr. Incredible that he was wrong and that he should have worked with someone else. And he literally lives on a place called No Manison Island, which basically is no man is an island to themselves, like saying that you have to work with other people. You cannot be alone. Which is actually a pretty good message considering it's from a villain standpoint. And the best part about him is the end, where he gets killed not by the heroes, but by his own vanity. His cape kills him. A part of his suit that he just chose to make himself look more grandiose, his cape, is the very thing that kills him. Because it gets stuck in a jet engine from like a plane, and he gets sucked in and dies. Alright. Now, moving on to the next character. Mr. Incredible. Mr. Incredible is... his story is pretty good because he's just living his normal job and then he gets fired. And he doesn't want to tell his wife. And also he's listening to police scanners because he wants to relive the glory days of being a superhero. But then he gets a secret message from Syndrome asking him to come to No Manison Island because there is a robot that he has to destroy. So he's like, oh yay, a chance to relive the glory days. And basically goes there, gets captured, and the movie continues. So that is basically his story. Now his wife's story is kind of different. She is completely oblivious to this whole situation until later in the film. And then she finds out that Mr. Incredible had a patch job on his suit. So imagine her surprise when she calls Edna Mode and finds out she has been making new suits for them. So she's like, okay, what's going on? So she uses the tracker that was put on Mr. Incredible's suit, and she finds out his location, which also gets Mr. Incredible captured. So, yeah. So then she decides to go and find him and get him back. So, let's talk about some other characters, the side characters. Now, I'm not going to talk about the kids in great detail, but here we go. The kids' dynamic is basically they want to use their powers, but their parents don't let them. For example, Dash, he just wants to compete in sports and run as fast as he can. But his mother knows that if he does that, then he could possibly get found out as a super and they would have to move. Violet really doesn't want to use her powers. Her powers are just like a side thing for her. She wants to be normal. That is her entire sort of story arc. And she gets very frustrated that she was born with powers instead of being born normal. And moving on to the other side characters. Frozone is voiced by Samuel L. Jackson himself, And really, he fits Frozone very much. Frozone is just like a really great character who is Bob Parr's best friend, Mr. Incredible. He's Mr. Incredible's best friend, and yeah, it's their dynamic, the way they work together, and that they're both listening to the police scanners. But, um, the fact that Frozone wants to go bowling, but they're actually going and listening to the police scanners is actually kind of funny. And finally, Edna Mode, voiced by Brad Bird. Edna Mode is probably one of the funniest parts of this movie. I mean, she is a fashion designer that designs their costumes. And she is also voiced by Brad Bird, the director. And she has one of the most recognizable Pixar phrases, "No capes." As she says, they can ruin everything. Which I also agree with that. Like, superheroes having capes, they would trip over it. It gets it would snag on something, all that kind of stuff. I mean, what are you gonna do? So, that concludes my video. This is the Lexo623, signing off.